Now let us take a trip back to a simple time, full of hope and changes, January of 2021. A year since the virus, being back from abroad, and planning to move with my girl. Little did I know it just will be 2020 the director's cut. Anyway, I decided to get back into the hobby more seriously with a genuinely nice kit from Tamiya. This Jack Panther Forlang, not to be confused with their less than stellar 45-year-old offering, will be done with a soft HC color set on the wet and snowy mode of December 1944 on the western front. I will start gluing the boogies and lower hull parts, excellent fitting and minimal cleanup and beautiful textures and molding, and glue them with Tamiya extra thin cement, letting it flow into the crevices, so we reduce the risk of leaving a hallmark for eternity of our fingerprints in the kit. After cutting off the gate, sanding it flat might be needed, and check with your nail the surface finish of the part. For small parts, try to use some tweezers to help positioning and keeping them in place while drying if needed. A quick modification for the wood jack base, if the wood texture is not already present on all faces, is to engrave it with a blade reproducing the missing wood grain carefully. With some extra thin cement, I blend the sharp edges of the new texture. To cut the pieces from the spruce, I recommend putting the flat part of the nipper away from the piece, so we get a little piece of gate and eliminate the danger of gouging detail or damaging fragile pieces. Then with single blade nippers, this time with the flat side squared against the surface of the part, I cut the gate. Depending on the piece, a sharp blade or sanding will be better or alternative to single blade nippers. Then we can sand the gates and seam lines. Now I will thin the fenders to scale appropriate thickness, well, as close as I can get with plastic ones. If these things trouble you, spend some extra money and get some photo etch fenders, which will also allow you to do damage very easily and convincingly should you want to. A tip for not having to make welds with epoxy putty, more on welds, which is trivial once you see it done in this linked video. When feeling lazy and to take advantage of the molded in ones is to put some extra thin cement and let it melt a bit and then press the two parts together, creating a weld. We need to make sure flat surfaces are flat, so bag your sanding paper against a hard flat surface and apply force evenly on the pieces so they do not get deformed. And for those hard to reach areas, using the back of the blade will even and flatten the surfaces with precision. I will fill the ejector marks with Tamiya white putty and a piece of sprue as applicator. I suggest making single-use tools that fit our specific needs with sprues. This putty can be cleaned and thinned with lacquer thinner. Takes around half a day to dry depending on thickness usually. Please be a bit patient before sanding it, as I went in way too early more than once and had to start over. Sanding sponges are ideal for sanding round surfaces and cylinders. Let's take care of that seam line in the cast mantle. I apply a bit of glue and put it in something easy to handle. Then, with an old spare end, I start replicating the cast texture. Repeat these simple steps as many times necessary to get it right. Now, vehicle tools. For starters, I'm drilling the clamps. Another option which is easier but costs extra money and having to acquire it are photo etch clamps or a whole vehicle detail offset. Up to you here, but for those that want to stick to the kit only, this is an important detail up step. For this, I'll use a fresh blade and a small 0 something drill bit. I'll use a bit of extra thin glue to melt and unify the newly carved surfaces. Another easy detail up to add is drilling the spare tracks. I love when manufacturers like Tamiya use polycaps on all wheels, and I can put them on and test. Not a big fan of vinyl tracks. I would prefer link and length, which I think Tamiya uses in more recent releases, because vinyl folded tracks need some work to shape it into place that we'll see later on. Let's finish the upper hull. The building part of this kit was a joy and very relaxing, as expected of Tamiya, not as quick as the Type 3 Chinokai I did after this one, link here, but highly recommended for people who want to be smart with their free time. I will add clamps for wiring for adding camouflage branches, starting drilling 2 small holes in each bracket. As expected of the finest Chinese tool in metal, lost several bits in this extremely intense operation. With some copper cable and tweezers, I make the clamps and later fix them on with cyanoacrylate glue. Thank you so much for watching, and if you made it this far, please subscribe and also check my Instagram to see more updates and content coming up.